In this video, we'll discuss the types of investment properties that you can invest in. The six main types of investment properties that you as a new investor can get involved in are: one, single family homes; number two, duplexes, quadplexes, and multifamily; number three, storage facilities; number four, mobile or manufactured homes; number five, office complex, strip malls, and hotels; and number six will be raw land. And so, guys, these are the main areas that we're going to talk about today briefly. And I'm going to kind of talk about some of the pros and some of the cons of dealing with each. And of course, which levels of investing that you can get involved with these properties. Let's first talk about single family homes. It's definitely a great investment. If you're definitely talking about your primary residence, that truly is your very first investment property, is your primary home residence where you live. But if you're looking for a secondary single family home as your investment property, understand that there's a little difference in between. The first difference is, for your primary residence, normally is going to be required, is considered residential property. And so it's not really considered an investment property. So in that regards, you can go ahead and qualify with the regular first time home buyers loan. You could do FHA, you could do VA Veterans Affairs loans. There's a number of programs out there, first time home buyers program, which will help you to qualify as far as getting your primary residence. And normally what's required is somewhere between 3 to 5% down for your down payment, and usually less than or about 1% for your closing costs. So that's a great thing there. But let's talk about single family homes as an investment. So your second home, of course, it'll still be qualified under your personal credit. And so that's one thing we're going to stress a little bit differently when investing in properties, is that if it's under 5 units, okay, 5 units, then it'll be considered residential property, which means most likely you will qualify with purchasing that property through your own individual credit. Okay. If it's 5 units or more, this will be considered commercial property. And so from there, there's a little bit different criteria that we'll talk about later on in the series to qualify for those particular loans. But for now, we're going to talk about single family homes. The advantage is that you can get a single family home for little or nothing. You could purchase this as a wholesale deal. You could purchase this as a bank REO, okay, which is a repossession. All right. You could get this as a fixer-upper. And usually the cost of entry to get a single family home is very, very low. And this is where most investors start off at, right here in this area. So usually, if you look around very carefully, and again, do your homework, like I talked about in the first part of getting knowledge, you could probably find some really hidden gems. You could look on Craigslist. You could look on a number of other places to find single family homes for sale by owner. Websites definitely is a great place to look for these. And so you'll find some great deals. Maybe a homeowner had owned a home, and maybe it was a relative's that passed away, like their grandmother or grandfather, and now they're out of state and they want to sell a home. A lot of times you could get a home for little or nothing that way. Or maybe you find a home that looks pretty old, and the value on it is very, very cheap, maybe for about $20,000 or $30,000, and this could be a potential fixer-upper. Okay, so you would buy that home, you would put a few cosmetic details to it to kind of get it up to par, and then you have several other options that you can do with single family homes. You could sell it to a retail buyer, which means another family could purchase it at a retail price, or you could sell it to another investor and sell it at a wholesale deal with a little less than retail price, and then you could recover the initial investment that you made plus all the repairs that you made to the home with some profit on top if you work the deal correctly. So it's always a great advantage to that. Now, let's talk about the downsides of single family homes. Only downsides is you have, if you own this property and you decide you want to rent it out, well, you have to rely on one person, okay, with an income to make the mortgage payments on there for you. And if something happens to that one person or that one person's income, then you're kind of left without any backup from there. And then you're left with having to pay out of your pocket. Okay. So that's on the rental side. Of course, if you are buying, fixing it up, and you decide to do what they call flipping, you want to flip it to another investor or flip it to a retail person, then of course you don't have to worry about the renter side of things. Our second area that we're going to discuss is duplex, quadplexes, and multifamily. Now, again, a duplex by definition are two residential units that's attached together to make one unit, but two different doors. And then we have quadplexes, which are two units or four units, excuse me, four units that are attached to make one building, but it's four different doors in one building. And then multifamily will be defined as apartment buildings. These are going to be definitely several doors within a structure. So you could have, 20 doors, you could have 50 doors, 100, 1,000. It's unlimited. But all of these guys are classified in the multifamily area. So again, for a low entry point, it's always great to start off with owning a couple duplexes and some quadplexes. But remember, when you go to qualify for a duplex or quadplex, because I said it's under 5 units, it would be considered a residential financing that you'll have to get, unless you're paying cash, of course. But the lenders will consider it as residential, which could be a good thing, because what a lot of investors do, especially when they're starting off, is they will go ahead and purchase a duplex or a quadplex with their own credit and their own down payment. And remember, because it's considered residential, you'll only have to put 3 to 5% down or do a first-time home buyers. And what the investor does is they actually live in one of the units and they rent out the other 2 or 3 units. So that's a great entry point to start when you have very little funds to start off with. Plus, you go ahead and get a primary residence in the deal. When you go to multifamily, this of course will be from your 5 units or more, which would be considered as commercial property. From here, guys, as we'll discuss later on in the videos, this is a different kind of qualifications that you need for financing. They not only look at your personal credit, but really what they're focused on is the income from that particular property. That is what the lender, bank, finance company is concentrating on. They're really not as concerned about your personal credit as much as the income that can come from the rental property for repayment. That is really the emphasis of what they're looking for. What are the downsides to this? Well, the only downside is that if you decide not to live in your duplex or quadplex starting off, then of course, this will be another ding to your credit or another additional mortgage on your personal credit. So that could affect your debt income ratio, possibly. Okay. Another thing is it may not be in a prime location that you find these. A lot of duplexes and quadplexes are in questionable areas, but they are great investments because they are low maintenance, they're low cost, and again, very easy to get into. Multifamily apartment buildings are great. They have multi doors. And so with that scenario, the upside is if you have, let's say, 100 units, 100 different apartments in this 1 or 2 buildings, if 2 or 3 people move out, that's still not going to affect you paying your mortgage, or it won't drastically affect your overhead profit that you get. Okay. But on top of it, you do have a number of responsibilities. You do have maintenance, you have garden, work, lawn care. You have maybe you might have a cleaning facility. You have to have a maintenance crew. You have to have some overhead management costs that are associated with apartment buildings and multifamily units. So those are the pros and cons in that area. Another great investment is storage facilities. A lot of people have never considered that, but storage facilities are a great investment. The advantages to having a storage facility is that number one, they are also a low entry cost to get into. Usually under $1 million, you could find you a good property to get into. And the great thing is, guys, is that it's low maintenance and you're really getting perpetual income on a monthly basis from these. Reason being is that there's always a high demand for people to get storage space to place their valuables, and they're going to pay on a monthly basis to go ahead and store their belongings. A few great secrets that I learned along the way with public storage is that they're not bound to rental agreements like a multifamily unit is. So if every single month you want to raise the rent on a storage facility, you're able to do that. Okay. Also, again, maintenance is very, very low because you only have doors to take care of. And then, of course, you don't need a lot of personnel to manage it. You can manage it yourself, or you could hire one or two people to manage a facility like this. So your overhead is very, very low. And in the real estate investing world, they actually consider storage facilities the number one investment because of such low overhead required to maintain a facility. On average, you're going to keep somewhere between 82 to 90% of your income that you get from storage facilities. And then 10% would be somewhat for taxes, maintenance, and other minor things with the storage facility. So great investment there. Maybe you've never considered, but manufactured homes are a great investment also. Reason being how they work is that not only do you, if you own a manufactured home area, well, you can actually own the mobile home itself and then rent that out so you could get rent. But you also own the land that's underneath the mobile home. And so a lot of times in these mobile home parks or manufactured home parks, you'll not only receive rent from the actual mobile home from the renter, but you also get lot rent also. So there's a fee for that. And then, of course, you could also charge for utilities like water bills. So owning a manufactured home park is really a good investment. The only cons to those is that, of course, sometimes they are in questionable areas. You do have to make sure that the maintenance is kept up on manufactured homes. They are, somewhat built kind of so-so in some areas. Of course, the older that they are, the more that it will deteriorate. And another con of manufactured home is that they do not appreciate in value. They decrease in value because it is not a structure that is attached. They consider this almost like a used car. So as it ages and gets older, the price of that will decline. But the upside is if you're in a decent location and you maintain the manufactured home, you could charge excellent rent where a payment on a mobile home is usually somewhere between $200 to $400 a month. In certain areas around the country, you could charge anywhere from 600, 800 to $1,000 for rental on a manufactured home if it's maintained well and in a decent area. So sometimes you can have well over 100% to 200% growth per month from the rental income of the manufactured home and the lot rent that's associated with it, plus water and extra utilities. Let's talk about another area, which are office complexes, strip malls, and hotels. We kind of clump these all together in the commercial end because these are definitely commercial areas, and so these are considered a little different, but it's still a great investment. What's so great about it is that you own these buildings, and then you have tenants that lock in leases from anywhere from a year to 5 years, 10 years, and 20-year leases, and so this is great residual income because most people, when they move into a commercial building with their traditional business, they have plans on wanting to stay and grow their business for a long time. And so, with office complexes, strip malls, these are excellent investments to get into because of the long term leases and residual income. Plus, because of location, it appreciates in value quite rapidly, also. The next thing that we'll look at is hotels. I've kind of lumped that in together because it functions pretty much the same way. When you own a hotel, of course, you're going to get monthly residual income, actually daily residual income, because of how you rent out or lease out the different spaces inside of a hotel. So this is great if it's a well-performing hotel. And so, of course, you always want to do your due diligence on there. Make sure that you do your research and find out when is its high period, low period, and of course, what are the actual nightly rentals of this particular hotel, and make sure that the amenities are up. And so, again, these are great investments to get into. Our last thing we'll talk about is raw land for purchase. Now, a lot of people don't consider raw land all the time for investment purposes, but for those who do their homework and understand things like development and future planning and things of that nature, raw land can be a great move because a lot of companies will rent space on your property if you own it. So if you know that some development is coming, or you know that they're expanding a highway, or let's say something is coming in the planning from the planning committee in your area, if you have a prime piece of land, you can hold on to that for pennies on the dollar and then just wait for the development to move in, and that will increase your value. But you can do a number of things. You could go ahead and lease out your land so that retail businesses can come and they would actually rent from you on a 20 or 50 or 100-year lease. Okay. Or you could have different things like, let's say the telephone company, they want to put towers on there. So they'll give you a 30, 40, 50, 100-year lease on your land just to pay for space for having raw land. Or you can hold on to that land and, of course, wait for it to appreciate in value and resell it to a developer, or sell it to someone who's building a subdivision, or you can sell it back to the city. So there's a lot of options that come with raw land, but definitely the people who take advantage of this are usually developers and planners that know that certain projects are coming within the next 5, 10, 15 years. And so for you to go ahead and make the most of that, go ahead and get connected to your planning and zoning committee in your local county or area or borough or wherever you are, and start sitting in on some of those meetings if you're looking at investing in your local area. And you'll find a lot of hidden gems that will be very, very profitable in the near future. That concludes our videos on different properties that you can invest in. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for our next class.